Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
What's going on? It's not coming out of anywhere. Okay, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday morning Sidelines edition. Got a great show in store for us today. We'll start off with Michael Gittens, the war report out of the Bi-Cities, and I'm talking Columbus, Phoenix City. Michael always has great stuff. We will go with second segment, Jacques Doucet down in Baton Rouge, WAFB, Channel 9, Baton Rouge. Did a big interview yesterday with LSU coach Brian Kelly, and it's about a 30-minute interview they'll be airing, but I saw excerpts of it last night on the newscast they do down there at 9 Monday nights, and he'll be with us to check in with LSU and his take on what's going on down there. Hour number 2, we'll start off with Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com. Olin always has a lot of really good information on the Aggies, and he's a truth broker. I mean, there are so many rumors out there about that program. You remember last year they had the Federal Reserve had funded NIL. I mean, it was getting to be ridiculous, and he'll lay it out. What's going on out there right now is as Bobby Petrino has been brought in to work with Jimbo Fisher, and I really believe this. If they and let Bobby Petrino and Bobby Petrino is given free reign to work with the quarterbacks in the offense, he will succeed. But that's a big if. I mean, Jimbo Fisher's set in his ways, but he brought him in. If I were him, I'd get out of Bobby Petrino's way and win. And also Rodney Orr will check in with us in the Bay Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport since 1964. Crimson Tide report that we do on Tuesdays. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. So lots to cover today. Follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. And bottom line, we will be getting a lot of information as we go along here. But again, 6 days a week, 25 shows at least a month, 50 plus hours of content every month. And we get on the best. Okay, but we have a lot to cover, and we'll bring Mike Gittens on here in just a moment. But I think the addition of Peyton Thorne coming in from Michigan State to Auburn, it gets people, it creates a lot of interest. You look at his work in the 21 and the 22 season. I mean, I think he was originally committed to Western Michigan, and then he decides to go to Michigan State, and it was a 2-star, 3-star. It depends on the service that you're looking at. But bottom line, Auburn doesn't have a quarterback right now. Robbie Ashford had last year to prove what he could do. I mean, how long do you have to go? But, I mean, I hope that Robbie Ashford and I hope that Holden Geringer will stick around and compete, because Peyton Thorne certainly hadn't been given the job. You saw what happened last week with the situation up at South Carolina. Shane Beamer had a guy that was wanting to transfer in supposedly and wanted him to guarantee him a starting job. So, it just doesn't work that way. And hats off to Shane Beamer for telling that kid to take a hike. And I don't know who it is. Of course, last year when they brought in Spencer Rattler, I wasn't a big fan of his because, he'd been pulled out of the Texas OU game 2 years in a row for what? And I didn't think he was a good teammate. But Shane Beamer had a relationship with him back to their days at Oklahoma, and he was able to get through to him. And at the end of the year, Spencer Rattler, if you think about it, was playing about as well as any quarterback in college football. That's and they won 8 games last year, and the beating that South Carolina put on Tennessee 63-38 at the end of the season was proof of that. Plus what they did the next week, they went up to Clemson and broke a 40-game home winning streak for Clemson, I think going back to the 2016 season. So hell of a performance when you get down to it for Spencer Rattler in South Carolina. Yeah. Mike Gittens is on with us right now. Mike, sorry about that. We just were working through some technical issues. My producer, Mildred, from the Stone Ages, I did not know it had been worked out. But how you doing this morning?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, Rob.
Okay. Mike, let's get going here. I want to get your thoughts on Peyton Thorne. First off, being signed at Auburn, or I guess is he signed, committed? How the portal works? He'll start the summer workouts. I think they start Auburn summer school starts May 16th or 17th. Is that about right? But kind of walk us through where we are with Peyton Thorne coming into Auburn.
Well, Peyton Thorne, first of all, is a graduate transfer. So, all the normal transfer rules don't apply to him. I'm so glad. Peyton Thorne is he's a guy who is very experienced, and he's got 2 years left to play. So a lot of people want to know, what kind of quarterback is Peyton Thorne? Well, Peyton is about a low 60% completion percentage quarterback, right? He threw for 2,600 yards last season, and that was good enough, for not much in the Big Ten. But the previous year, Michigan State won 11-2. Now he's making this decision to transfer out. Why is he making that decision? Well, that locker room, Rob, is falling apart there. Peyton Thorne is making this decision in the best interest, I think, of his own football future. Hugh Freeze has an opportunity for him. So he's coming in as a graduate transfer with a lot of P5 experience. And that is something that Hugh Freeze wanted. Now, what do we know about what Hugh Freeze knew about Peyton Thorne? They knew before he got in the portal, he was somebody they were going to target. So they went after Peyton Thorne. They got Peyton Thorne, and he immediately raises the floor of the QB room for Hugh Freeze and company. So we're very they're very excited down there on the Plains to have Peyton Thorne there, and it provides an opportunity for the other quarterbacks to raise their floor, right, and get better, or face the possibility of not playing for 2 years behind Peyton Thorne.
Mike, I cannot hear you. We're having audio issues right now, but how good can Peyton Thorne be, in your opinion, compared to, say, the other top quarterbacks in the SEC?
Again, Peyton Thorne is somewhat of a mid-tier quarterback, right? And by the numbers, right, he's about 70% when kept clean. So when given time to throw, Peyton Thorne can complete some passes, right? He's gotten an adjusted completion percentage around 71.7% last year. But under pressure, he's not very accurate. So, on the move, the key for teams will be get Peyton Thorne on the move, get him out of the pocket. And if you can get him out of the pocket, you can really cause some havoc. So it really is going to put a lot of pressure on this offensive line, I think, Rob, to make sure that they can protect him. Because if you cannot protect him, Robbie Ashford might be a better option for you as somebody who can use his legs to create in the run game. So we're looking forward to seeing what the dichotomy of this offense is in terms of what they call and what they run between Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford, potentially. Holden Gariner, they said he made a lot of great strides this offseason, but we're not sure that they're willing to risk it this season to throw Holden out there. So it's just one of those things where the battle will continue. You said earlier that Peyton is not guaranteed the job, and I want to stress that. He still has to come in and win this in the fall. on a shortened schedule, and we'll see if he'll be able to do that. But I think the staff brought him in because they believe he can.
Yeah, I agree with you. And now that means that the Auburn offensive line, which has been just a real problem for years, is going to absolutely have to come through. And you're right. I mean, if a kid's not good under pressure and you're coming into the SEC, that's a prescription for disaster. That's my concern.
Right.
And and you're right about Robbie Ashford. You cannot afford, 3 quarterbacks in a quarterback room is really not as many as you'd like to have, is it?
No. And listen, they were always going to bring somebody in. They were always going to bring somebody in to play quarterback. Peyton Thorne just happened to be that guy. So you have to have 3 viable quarterbacks on your roster. Think back to Brian Harson's first year at Auburn, right?
Yeah.
If they had a viable option in the Iron Bowl, they would have been down to their 3rd quarterback with TJ Finley playing on one leg. So bringing a guy in, you would prefer not to just bring in warm bodies, right, Rob? You want to bring in guys who can compete immediately and challenge for the job. You just hope that they're okay with the competition and how that competition fleshes out. So a lot of people believe with his numbers, he raises the floor, and he does. Listen, Auburn only passed for 2,000 yards last season.
Yeah,
2,000. That's anemic, right? Peyton Thorne, on a team that was falling apart, passed for 2,600 yards. Now, these will be different defenses and different athletes. In my opinion, higher level athletes. Look at the NFL draft this past couple weeks ago. It just littered with SEC talent. They had the most draft picks of any conference for the umpteenth year in a row. And, will he be able to perform against top talent and top coaching minds week in and week out? That will have a lot to do with him. It'll have a lot to do with the scheme that they come up for him. And, he's going to have to raise his game. So is this the year that he can take his game? Now, he played with Kenneth Walker that year. Michigan State went 11-2.
Yes.
They didn't have much of a run game the next year. And like I said, it was a mess the next year. He's playing here at Auburn with one of the best. Well, I'm not sorry, not one of the best back Hugh Freeze has said he's ever coached, and Jacques Hunter. Right. If the run game can get going at Auburn and they can lean on Peyton Thorne just to manage the game rather than save it with his arm, then I think Auburn looks pretty good under his leadership. But, we'll see how that goes for them.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point about Jacques Hunter, how critical he is. Kenneth Walker III was a kid from right here in Shelby County at Arlington High School that was a 2 or a 3-star who signed with Wake Forest. And then he transfers to Michigan State, and he's a hell of a player. He was not evaluated properly, probably didn't go to the camps. The Auburn offensive line has been horrible for years. And I tell you what, and I said this to some friends this morning on a group text, Auburn has got to get away from this narrative that Georgia and Alabama are going to get whatever they want, whoever they want, whenever they want, and quit caving into that, because Auburn right now is stuck at being an 8-5 program. I hate to see Auburn give back all the gains they've worked so hard to get over the last 40 years. You think about Pat Dye. Say what you want about Terry Bowden, but if in 93 and 94, when Auburn was on probation, if he hadn't had that 21-1 record, Auburn could have slipped into the abyss of hell and been into a 15-year cycle, what Tennessee's trying to pull themselves out of. You know where I'm coming from on this?
Mm-hmm.
Auburn fans have got to say, we're going to do whatever it takes to win and quit trying to be, again, as a friend of mine who covers Auburn closely said, if you want a bunch of nice kids on the team that are going to be good representatives, go to class, graduate, and do things right. I mean, which we all want, and you're just happy. You go 8-5. Why'd you fire Gus? Don't you want more? I want more. I want to win national championships.
Right. Well, a lot of people want to know where the floor is at this ceiling. I get asked that question at least 10 times a week. What is the floor for this team? How many games can they win? Listen, you've got a $6 million coach. So the floor this season is 6 wins. It's a bowl game, right? If they don't make a bowl game, this first season will have been a failure for Hugh Freeze. And I'll say that again for the people in the back. If they don't make a bowl game, this first season will have been a colossal failure for Hugh Freeze, because it means that they lost to somebody that they weren't supposed to lose to, and quarterback likely did not come along at all. Now, what does Auburn's schedule look like? Rob, it's one of the easiest schedules that Hugh Freeze could have asked for in year one. It was a total gift to him, and he's got to do something with it that he can use his schedule this year. So they start the year September 2nd with UMass at home. They follow that. They head out to the West Coast to Cal. That's a 4-8 team that they're playing from last year. They have Samford and Texas A&M. Texas A&M could not be in more disarray right now. Jimbo Fisher, has gone out and hired a new offensive coordinator, so we'll see how that goes. They've got Georgia September 30th at home. We'll chalk that one as an L for now until we see. Don't
do that.
Yeah, we got to chalk that.
I know where you're coming from.
But LSU on the road, and look, this was an LSU team they should have beat last year. In disarray, Robbie Ashford threw for 377 yards in that game last year. You've got the Mississippi's there, followed back-to-back weeks. Tell me Ole Miss and Mississippi State look scary this year. They do not. And Mississippi State, you lost to in overtime. That was another game they probably should have won. It was Cadillac's first game as the head coach. You've got Vandy, and then you finish out Vandy, Arkansas, New Mexico State, Bama. There are 7 wins on that schedule.
Yeah.
Rob, there are 7 wins on that schedule, and if you pull it together, there are possibly 8. Because if you pay $6 million to a coach because you expect him to beat somebody that nobody expects him to beat, right? And he's got to be able to scheme these kids into a win. I think people are like, I saw an article that was posted to Twitter from On3. Rob, and they were saying that getting Peyton Thorne is going to be the difference between Auburn making a bowl game and not making a bowl game.
Hold that thought, Michael. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. I want to develop that. This is Tuesday Sidelines. Mike Gittens, the War Report, right after this.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BB for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Mike Gittens, you were making some really good points before the break about Peyton Thorne. There's a narrative that he was brought in. That's the difference between Auburn going to a bowl game and not going to a bowl game. Keep going with that one. I want to hear that.
Yeah, I just think the narrative that the QB is going to be the difference between a bowl game and missing a bowl game for Auburn is off base. I think it's completely off base. This was a 5-win team last year in disarray. They were 1 game short of making a bowl game last year.
Yeah.
And they fired the coach midseason. They had no passing game, and they had to figure out the run game over the last four games with one of the hardest schedules. I think the difference between making a bowl game and not making a bowl game should be the coach you hired. It should be Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
It should be the guy that you're paying $6 million a year, right? $1 million a win. So to me, they've got to go out and he's got to find a scheme that gets the best out of everybody, not just the quarterback.
Yeah.
It's not just about the quarterback. Now, how Peyton Thorne, Robbie Ashford, whoever's the quarterback might be the difference between whether you just make a bowl game or you have an 8 or 9 win season.
Yeah,
certainly. Right. But the difference between 5 and 6 wins, I just thought it was a really poor take on where Auburn is. And, sometimes that's my frustration with how the national media covers Auburn, because they're not paying attention. If you think that a quarterback is going to be the difference between 5 and 6 wins, you're not paying attention to what's going down on the plains. It's the SEC West. There's still a ton of talent on every team down there. And that's why you can see teams hire the right coach and turn it around in a year or two. Right. Yeah. Because they're not walking into talentless locker rooms. Guys down there can play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the track record. The second year Pat Dye's there, they win 9 games. The first year Terry Bowden's there, 11 games. Tommy Tuberville's second year, they play Florida for a second time in the SEC championship, but they're there. Go on to Gene Chizik, 2 years in, a national championship. 2 years later, the worst season in 62 years since 1950 when Wofford beat that 0-10 Auburn team, which ushered in Auburn hiring Shug Jordan. And then you think about Gus Malzahn. His first year, he plays for the national championship. Bottom line, you should win. The floor at Auburn should be about 8 games based on the talent alone. So 2 things I want to say to you. One, a lot of people are beginning to compare the Auburn situation to Florida. Florida just opened up the $115 million Heavener Center down there for football performance. Auburn's a $91 million, the Waltz Center. Number 2, I got to say this, talent-wise, Auburn is Jake Wimberly's on with us, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive in Jackson, Mississippi. And I'm going to send you this report that he's put out. I don't know if I did it yet. It's a lot of analytics. He's a civil engineer and really, really knows his football. He's a Mississippi State grad, covers the state really well. But it's all these analytics about talent by position, how you can do. And I'll send it to you here during the break. But with Auburn, you got to say, and there's a text from one of our listeners in Valdosta, 4 transfer offensive linemen going to start. How soon should Auburn fans be? I mean, look, Hugh Freeze has won everywhere he's been. That's all I'm saying. Audrey?
Yep. But by his own words, he is the guy who does 2 things well. And these are things he said in his opening press conference when he was introduced as head coach. He said, I can develop quarterbacks and I turn programs around quickly. Those are the 2 things he does well. So I think it's fair for fans to hold his feet to the fire for a quick turnaround. Now, let's point to some other things he said since he's been here. He talked about recruiting. He said, listen, if by 2024, 2025, we're not in the top 7 in recruiting, everybody here is going to be looking for jobs in 3 years. Right. He understands the importance of recruiting and making sure that you get high level talent in, because what we learned anything from Brian Harsin, we learned that you cannot outdevelop Nick Saban and Kirby Smart right now. They are recruiting at such a high level and they have such a great margin of error for the talent that they're bringing in that you're not going to outdevelop those guys. Now, Tuberville did a lot of that in the early 2000s. He got 2-star kids in that nobody else wanted, and he developed it into top tier talent. Rob, with the advent of sports nutrition and the way kids are made these days, you have to go out and you have to get top tier talent. You have to convince that talent to stay and wait their turn. You have to create pipelines of athletes at each position where they say they know it's going to be their turn, and they will stick with you and trust the process. And if you cannot get people to trust the process, you're going to have a lot of problems. So, Hugh Freeze has to turn it around quickly. He has to turn around quickly. This was this is part of his redemption arc. Now, this was a guy, who had a little bit of a checkered past. He's been very open with fans and saying, listen, just give me a chance to earn your trust. And I'll tell you what, nothing earns trust more than W's. So go out and get W's on the field, get them early, beat the teams that you're not, beat a team that nobody expects you to beat. and he'll start to earn that trust. So I think it has to start in year one, which is why I'm saying they can't miss a bowl game in year one.
Yeah, I agree.
There's absolutely no excuse for that.
Yeah. Well, you're down in the land in the Bi-Cities, Columbus, Phoenix City, whitewater rafting, class 4, even a class 5 rapid, I might add. It's incredible. But let me just say this. Phoenix City Central, Patrick Nix is the coach there now. And everybody, that I've talked to put to rest any rumor that Patrick has an axe to grind with Auburn because Bo left and went to Oregon. There's so much talent at that school. Marcus Davis, does he live in Phoenix City or does he live in Auburn now? I mean, you're starting to see Auburn actually recruit again.
Right,
it's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, Phoenix City is and the Columbus tri-state area is such an important area for Hugh Freeze. I mean, I can't stress that enough. So many good football players have come out of what is really a talent-rich region. And the non-emphasis that the last staff had on this area was mind-boggling. So you got to go get kids in your backyard. Not last year. It was the last year. The state of Alabama had one of the richest talent pools of kids coming out ever. And a good majority of those kids either just went to Bama or they left the state. And they've got to stop the bleeding there. They have to stop the bleeding there. If you can't recruit your backyard, it's going to be hard to recruit anywhere else. And you can't convince hometown kids to drive 35 minutes up the road to Auburn and play football for a premier program. You're going to have problems. So hopefully Hugh Freeze can solve that part of the puzzle here, in year one.
Yeah. And I know working in Columbus those years, we covered a 75-mile radius. And the Jacques Patterson and Rex Castillo, the two sports guys at Channel 3, WRBL, told us a year ago, they said, Rob, the 2021 Auburn-Georgia State game, they were there covering that, obviously, WRBL, News 3 on your side. They said 41 of those kids on those two rosters we covered in high school. And I know, that's between Auburn and Georgia State. That's how much talent there is right there. And if you're not recruiting that, you're just a lazy ass. That's what happened. Now, let me ask you this. You were there with Tommy Tuberville. And, I know Coach Tuberville, and you worked there videoing the practices. You hit on it, the development part. Hey, Carlos Dansby, why don't, Gene Chizik, hey, man, I think you could be an all-conference defensive back, but your money position is linebacker. I mean, you got to have that.
Right. Yeah, I'll tell you what, in addition to that, you had guys like Ben Grubbs who played defense their whole life, right? And they told them, they said, if you change your weight and switch positions, you can be, you'll play a long time in the NFL. And he did that. He had a 9-year NFL career, played with the Ravens and some other teams. Listen, at the end of the day, you have to, talent development is not an exact science. It is really, really difficult to develop talent at this level and to identify talent. The difference though, and this is why you have to recruit at a high level, right, is that the people who are recruiting at a high level have a higher level for margin for their misses, Rob. So when you miss, it is, you've got the next 5-star behind to help. And, that's what Hugh Freeze has to do. So hopefully Peyton Thorne helps them bridge that gap at quarterback to what they hope is a great future starting quarterback in Walker White. Or like I said, if he's not the guy, you do what you said you could do and you develop Robbie Ashford into a starting SEC quarterback. Yeah,
I do. And Mike, we're about out of time for this segment, but I got to tell you, man, I am getting a lot of people going, got to have Mike G back on. He really knows. And you do. You really know your stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing you again at media. You're going to make media days this year up in Nashville?
Yeah, we'll be there all week. So we'll be right there on Media Row broadcasting live. Rob, we'll definitely have you over to our table for a live broadcast for Media Days.
I'm looking forward. Let's do this again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Tell people how they can follow you because, again, what cracks me up about you is you've got that poker face, man. You keep a straight face. And you know what you're talking about. But I'm talking about at media days last year, some of the questions that you were hitting Harsin or whoever with, but you really know your stuff. And I'm so glad you're doing better and having you back down here in the South in the Bi-Cities. But you're right. I love it down there. I've been there 6 times the last couple of years to visit. by the way, have you been down there to the Chili Thai restaurant in downtown Columbus yet?
I haven't. I've
got-
done sushi down there.
You got to try it. But tell people how they can follow you, Mike. And again, look forward to having you on next week. And thank you so much for taking time to join us and working through the technical issues.
Yeah, you can follow us at The War Report. We are The War Report on every single social media platform, TW Report on TikTok, Rob. Also, check us out at thewarreport.com where you can find all our written content and follow everything that The War Report is tracking. We got some great things coming this summer leading into the fall.
All right. Looking forward to it. Have a great day, Jay. I appreciate it very much, Mike. All right. Let's go in here now. Jacques Doucet. Jacques, good morning. And I watched your interview, part of it last night. That's a damn good interview. I like your style of questions. I like the one you said. You say you're not going to play two quarterbacks, but are you going to possibly play two quarterbacks? I was telling my wife, I said, I'm learning a lot watching this guy. But it was really good. And he certainly does not lack for confidence, but I like your interview style. That's why you were Sportscaster of the Year in Louisiana in 2022. But you go out there, that's something we're not seeing much of anymore. You know, the local reporters going out and interviewing the coach. That was a national broadcast quality interview. The excerpt that I saw, the 30-minute entirety will be released today, correct?
Yeah, Rob, appreciate that. And thank you to Michael Bonnet, who's the sports information director with LSU football, who set that interview up and allowed us to go out there and chat with LSU head coach Brian Kelly for half an hour. So last night we put a little excerpt out of it of Coach Kelly talking about the quarterbacks and Jaden Daniels returning for his second year at LSU, his fifth year of college football, and a very electric backup in Garrett Nussmeier, who certainly is ready to get into the game and do some things after showing what he could do in the SEC championship game and also in the Citrus Bowl against Purdue. And an interesting thing, Rob, you probably have like friends who, ask you questions or say, you need to ask this or you need to ask that,
Oh, yeah.
And so I got a friend of mine who he's like, who scheduled this Army game? This is ridiculous. They run this complicated offense and it's so hard to get ready for. And why are we playing them October 21st in the middle of, a week after Auburn and then before? So I asked him about that. And sure enough, Coach Kelly was like, yeah, this is a game I'm not crazy about getting. They're very difficult to get ready for. And we won't be playing them again, not on a schedule, so to speak, unless LSU's playing them in a bowl game. And if LSU's playing Army in the bowl game, it probably probably wasn't a great season. Yeah. So anyway, so we're going to put out the full half-hour interview later today at WAFB.com and our YouTube page.
Yeah. Well, like Coach Kelly was saying, they run that triple option. I've watched Memphis in the American Athletic Conference play Navy. All Navy has to do is complete 5 or 6 passes in a game with that triple option, taking your knees out. And then all of a sudden your linebackers and your front set, everybody's playing back deeper and they're running just underneath and there's nobody, getting 5, 6, 7, 8 yards of carry. And Brian Kelly's right. Brian Kelly, if I'm not mistaken, is only 3 or 4 games separated. I'm not saying he's Nick Saban, but in total wins, is he that close to Nick Saban's win total?
I think I got to look it up. He might be the winningest coach or right there in terms of victories currently in coaching. He certainly was the winningest coach in Notre Dame history when he left in terms of victories. And, everybody, even when you're top 5 in your profession, everybody can point to something and say, well, you don't have a national title, but that's why he came here. I mean, I always point to 2012 real quick. That was the year that LSU played Alabama in Tiger Stadium. And at the very end, they threw the screen pass to TJ Yeldon to win the game. Alabama did and ripped LSU's heart out. Well, that same year, that Alabama team played Brian Kelly's undefeated Notre Dame team in the national championship, and the game was a joke. I mean, within 5 minutes, you could tell that Notre Dame was way in over their head. And that's why Coach Kelly came to LSU. He'll have that kind of talent to compete. But the flip side is, and in that interview, he said, I learned last year, I had been told and whatnot, but I learned playing in the SEC every week It doesn't matter. The stadium's packed, it's loud, and the team we're playing has talent. Auburn fired their coach last year. LSU barely beat Auburn. It's those kind of things that happen week after week.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting, and you're right. You go back to that 2012 Alabama 42, Notre Dame 14. I think Alabama could have scored every time they had the ball. They were so much better. But Brian Kelly, I would love to have him as a head coach for my team. I'll take Hugh Freeze too. I think Hugh Freeze has a lot of upside, but Brian Kelly is an accomplished coach everywhere he has been. He did the Cincinnati test, okay? And maybe if somebody can tell me, I still don't really get Cincinnati chili versus the rest of Chile. I mean, it's like when people try to tell me that they have, Cajun food, Louisiana style. I go, seriously, if it's been frozen, it's not really seafood. Just gonna say that. But we're gonna get it. We're gonna take a break here in a minute. But Jacques, you're covering LSU and you're seeing the running game. I want to talk about John Embry and the running back room when we come back, because the talent at LSU is top 5, top 6 right now. And you've got the right coach. Yeah, he went to the playoffs twice at Notre Dame, went to the national championship game in 2012. So he knows how to get there. Now, let's take this LSU talent from last year or this year, put that on his 2012 Notre Dame team, put that on any of his playoff teams. How many national championship rings do you think Coach Brian Kelly would have? I mean, that's just something you're right about that. That's why he said, I'm coming to LSU 10 years, $1 billion or whatever they're paying him. But yeah, that's why he wanted to see, can I do this? We'll be right back. Jacques Doucet, Channel 9 in Baton Rouge. Jacques Doucet, talk about the LSU running back room, because everybody in the SEC knows this. If you're a fan, you're a coach or a player, if you can't run the ball and stop the run, you're going to have a hard time being successful. Then you throw in a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, who can run, he can throw, and he got a lot better as the season went on. So I want to hear about the running backs and player development on that staff.
Well, it's going to be a running back by committee again. It certainly looks like during the Les Miles era, and I guess into Coach O to an extent, you had a Jeremy Hill back there, a Leonard Fournette, a Darius Geis, somebody you turn around and can hand the ball to 20, 25 times, and power ahead. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, of course, was the piece on the 2019 national championship team. This is going to be different. John Emery is a guy who came to LSU. He was originally committed to Georgia. He was a 5-star, and certainly he came to LSU with huge expectations. He's not lived up to those. There's been some frustration with some academics off the field. Of course, he missed the entire 2021 season because of academics. Last year, I think he had his best year collectively in terms of plays he made, including a catch and run touchdown against Alabama in Tiger Stadium. But right now he's in limbo. He did not practice with the team all spring, and I'm not sure if he's going to be back. Coach Kelly hasn't ruled that out, but there are some doubters out there. On the flip side of things, a guy like Josh Williams, who's not a big guy at all, but it's a 3.7, 3.8 GPA, is already graduated, and he's a pretty good football player too. I think he's a favorite to perhaps wear the number 18 jersey for LSU this year in terms of the prestige of that jersey and the leadership and whatnot. And then you got some other guys coming in. Trey Holly's going to be a true freshman, or is a true freshman. He played in the spring game and actually caught a little swing pass and scored a touchdown. Caleb Jackson comes to LSU from nearby Liberty High School as well. And the guy they really talked about, who perhaps has improved and they're looking forward to, is Noah Cain. He started his career at Penn State, broke his foot, and then last year he was kind of LSU's touchdown goal line guy. When they got close, point A to point B, punch it in. And Coach Noah Cain told me that he feels like he's got a lot more to show this year. So it's a group of guys, Rob, that they're looking to, and that can work because if everyone knows they're going to get 4 or 5 touches or more, they stay engaged in the game plan. But then you've always got the guy who says, hey, man, I need like 10 touches before I'm lathered up and can go, before I'm warm. So that's the dynamic there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you think about it, the days of a running back getting 35 or 40 carries in a game, we don't see that very much. And it's because now they look at it and say, I just want to get enough touches so I can have enough tape for the NFL scouts to evaluate me fairly, so my body is fresh. Because what's happening, you've got guys now, Jaden Blue, the running back out of Texas, skipped the 21 college football season or 22 college football season because he wanted to prepare for his dream of playing in the NFL. Well, hey, what about Texas? I mean, and it's just they keep like, well, I'm going to keep playing kick the can. At some point, you're going to have to get physical. And we all know that the average NFL career is less than 5 years. I mean, we have a lot of guys on this show as regular guests that played in the NFL, and most of them is about 5 years. And they said I was ready to go. My body, just when you're laying on the ground for a long period of time after a hit, that's when you're like, you know what? I don't want to be 45 and not know where I am or what my name is or what my wife's name is. And that's why they walk away. But then you got guys like Carlos Dansby that played 16, 17 years. Those are very rare, aren't they?
Yeah, the tread on the tire, right? You're trying to keep as much tread on the tire as you can. An interesting story. This is way back when, but Kevin Falk, of course, was LSU's all-time leading rusher. Still LSU's all-time leading rusher. He played 4 years and started every year.
Yeah.
When he got to the NFL, he said, "Hey, I'm a all-purpose back. I'm an every down back." And Bill Belichick said, "Here's the deal. You're going to be a third down back, and you're going to return kicks and whatnot." And Kevin said he was initially pretty pissed. And 13 years later, he had played 13 years in the NFL and said, "Hey, look, if I would have maybe been an every down back, I would have, burned out quick." And I lost you for a second. I would have burned out quick and been out of the league, like you said, in 5 years or so. So yeah, there is that to be said.
Yeah, I remember him in the '95 season, Jerry DiNardo out of Karen Crow next to Lafayette. But he is one of the how tall is he? 5'9", 5'10"?
5'8", 5'9", maybe. Okay. Yeah.
I think I looked it up. Of the 10 all-time leading rushers in NFL history, I don't think any of them are over 5'9". Walter Payton maybe ran a 4.7. Emmitt Smith 4.65. Barry Sanders was 5'8". But Kevin Falk, you're right.
Warwick Dunn here from Baton Rouge.
Oh yeah, out of Catholic. You got a Catholic
guy. Yeah, look, this guy knows everything. He's got a computer here, Rob Browne.
Idiot savant, my father calls me. No, but I remember so well because I've been to Baton Rouge a lot of times. You got to remember, Memphis, any Catholic church you go to, you've got a lot of LSU fans. You're going to have a Mardi Gras, and you're going to have several events during the year when they cook the jambalaya and the gumbo. The Holy Trinity. I love it down there. And the bottom line is with LSU, so many players. You think back about Mike Stonebreaker. Was he out of River Ridge, Louisiana? Remember, those guys were leaving and going to Notre Dame. They were going to Michigan. They were leaving. And then Jerry DiNardo comes in. But it was Nick Saban has changed it, and it has never – Alabama can get some players out of there. I know Auburn does. A few players do. But wouldn't you say Baton Rouge per capita puts out more talent than any big city? I wouldn't say – it's not as big as Memphis or Atlanta, but it's hard to beat what they do in Baton Rouge or Mobile.
Yeah, I mean, and then an hour down the road is New Orleans. I mean, that I-10 connection there and the talent that they put out, and then even into Lafayette. There's we create so much talent. I mean, I haven't done the studies recently, but they would always say Louisiana per capita would send more talent to the NFL and to college football than anybody. And we do a Player of the Year award here in Baton Rouge, where the 70 teams in our radius that we cover. And I remember one year we had the finalists were like Jarvis Landry, Lael Collins, Landon Collins, that kind of talent that gets produced here every year is pretty epic.
Yeah. And you think about Napoleonville, Louisiana. I remember when Brandon Jacobs came up and he came to Auburn. He was back in the backfield with Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Browne. I was at practice one day, March of 2003, and he came around on a toss sweep. I mean, it was terrifying. I was like I'm about to be hit by a Mack truck, 6'4", 270. But there's just so much talent that comes out of there. When you look at LSU, though, the hallmark of LSU defense has always been the great defensive linemen. I mean, Glenn Dorsey, Marcus Spears, there's so many of them. How does that front seven look in your opinion? Because, again, Buddy Martin, who's on our show every week, GatorVateMedia.com, said, and Alabama, Gary Harris and Rodney Orr will tell you, they can't even go to practice. He said, but if you come in from ESPN or somewhere national, suddenly, as Buddy says, you know what an expert is? I go, what's that? He goes, it's somebody who's from out of town who has an opinion. But, you think about that. You get to, you had that interview with Brian Kelly. So you're getting to practice, you're getting to see things. And I got to ask you, how good is LSU's front seven going to be? Are they deep? Because they grow them down in the state of Louisiana. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, LSU, a proud history in defensive linemen, like you said. One guy that I saw the other day is now in coaching up in Ruston is Kyle Williams, who I think might be the best that LSU's had in the last 15, 20 years in terms of a pro career. He played at Buffalo his entire career, never played for anybody else. And so that's a smaller market and maybe not as glamorous, and maybe he didn't get as much exposure. But, they produce so many. I mean, obviously Marcus Spears on the ESPN network or on ESPN and all the NFL coverage he does. But, I think this year it's going to start with Mason Smith. You talked about that Thibodeau area and whatnot, and that's where he came from. Last year was poised to have a really huge season and then hurt his knee immediately on the first drive of the game against Florida State. So he's been, you can't have a guy who has embraced the rehab process better than Mason Smith. I mean, a lot of guys, they go into a shell, they disappear. This guy, he was on the field for every game this year, pregame warm-ups. He's trying to do stuff. He's helping his teammates warm up. LSU goes to their bowl game in Orlando. He goes. He speaks at the pep rally. He's doing everything he can to stay engaged and hooked in. And so I think he's the guy that you start with on the offensive line. Mekhi Wingo transferred here from Missouri. I think he was perhaps one of the biggest surprises on the team, the amount of reps he played last year and the performance he had. Now, LSU got worn down late in the year. If you remember that Texas A&M upset, the Aggies beat LSU in the regular season finale in College Station. LSU got pushed around. They got shoved around. I think they were running out of gas because they lacked numbers. This year, they feel like they've attacked the transfer portal and got a lot of new guys. Harold Perkins, obviously, is a true freshman, had a stretch there where he was unstoppable. He was in on every play. You can ask Bryce Young for Alabama. I mean, he was in his jock strap every play. Now, Coach Kelly, in that interview we talked about, look, down the stretch, I think some teams, Kirby Smart and company, kind of found some ways to maybe game plan and chip him and take him out of things a little bit. Omar Spates, LSU, of course, we know college football is now like the pros, free agency. Hey, I need a guy. Go get a guy. Okay, we got this guy from Oregon State who's an all-conference performer. They're going to plug him in, and they're also high on Greg Penn, who's been around for a while and had a big spring. So that's a little taste of your front seven there. And what they can do. Matt House is the defensive coordinator, and Coach Kelly is very high on him, and I think he did a very fine job for LSU in year one. So that's a little taste of your defense in your front seven.
Well, got a question here from Tanner Smith, originally from DeRidder, Lake Charles. His family, the Stein Home and Garden stores all over Louisiana. Big LSU fan up in Memphis, a member of our hunting club. He says, what about the Florida State matchup in Orlando beginning of the season? How big is that game for LSU in terms of wanting to get it back they didn't win it last year, but Florida State is going to be a formidable opponent. And that's about as tough a road game as I think it's a tougher road game than the Texas road game in 2019.
Yeah, it's a beautiful game. This is what makes college football so exciting and brings out the juice like no other sport, in my opinion. When you've got a season opener, they're going to play it in Orlando, like LSU played in New Orleans last year. So it's not a quote unquote home game for Florida State, but it's in their backyard. Yeah. And so it's Labor Day weekend. It's Sunday night. It's a huge television rating. And from what I've seen, it's been voted the top non-conference game of the year in college football. It's going to be a lot different than last year, in which last year LSU and Florida State were kind of viewed as a couple of ho-hum teams. Neither was ranked going into the year. That game was not pretty last year. It was a close game. It went down to the final kick in which LSU had the PAT blocked, but those teams kind of wobbled around. And it's like, man, this ain't good. And but this year, like I said, they're both going to be viewed as top 10 teams, and a lot different this time around. And yeah, if you lose a game like that right out of the box, it takes a lot of wins after that, Rob, to get the fans back on board to say, okay, we've got a chance to do something. When you lose that one right out of the box, it's a big downer. And so, yeah. Well, I see you're about to say something.
No. I was just going to ask you something. Last year, some of the comments from Keyshawn Boutte after the game, and I don't like players to come out publicly and be critical or just even virtue signal anything. You keep it close, close the ranks. But I think something happened. He was considered one of the top receivers in college football. And where did he get drafted? 6th round, or Eli Ricks?
6th round, yeah.
Okay, and Eli Ricks did not get drafted, who ended up transferring to Alabama. But Keyshawn Boutte, your experience with him when you've been around him, he has all the talent in the world. What do you think he's going to need to do to make it in the NFL? Because, again, it's not a lack of talent.
Yeah, Keyshawn was from like the New Iberia area, played for Westgate High School. His freshman year at LSU was that, funky COVID season of 2020, and he really didn't do a whole lot until late in the year, and then he just totally exploded. Fans might remember that game, the field goal in the fog at the Swamp in Florida. LSU, I think, was a 28-point underdog and won the game that year. And Keyshawn, I think, caught a touchdown and some huge plays in that game. And then the regular season finale, I think they played it 6 days before Christmas against Ole Miss in a rainy Tiger Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
He sets the SEC record for yards in a game, 308, I think it was, receiving against Ole Miss. They just shallow crossed him to death against Lane Kiffin. No one could tackle him. And then 6 games through 2021, which is when Coach O got fired, he was just tearing the world on. He was setting the world on fire and having a huge year. Then he gets hurt at Kentucky. And then that kind of set off a chain reaction of events that were hard to come back from. He is one of the first faces of the NIL era in terms of takes pictures in front of a very expensive sports car. Look what I got, and all that. And then he and Coach Kelly did not get off on the right foot. If you remember in the spring, somebody asked Coach Kelly about Keyshawn Boutte. He goes, well, I know his first name, and that's about it. And so it was a case of he's not around. He's maybe a little kind of like the anti-Mason Smith, instead of being there all the time and I'm going to rehab, it's kind of, it sucks and I'm hurt and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm not sure if he ever totally recovered from that. We kind of questioned during the year, has he lost the step? Because he kind of became more of a possession receiver. He did help LSU win some games. Did he live up to expectations of being a Biletnikoff Award finalist? Absolutely not. I think he finished with 500 yards receiving. But he did. Yeah. He was huge in the Florida game. I think he had over 100 yards. And in the Alabama game, made some tough catches and drew a pass interference call late in the game and some stuff like that. But and then there were some things like, look, he had a child like on a Thursday, and then he didn't play on Saturday to be with the kid. It's like, okay, that's an important thing, but didn't he have played? And it just kind of things like that just kind of went on and on and on. And I think, Rob, it was just a case of, man, kind of maybe an energy drainer, way too much drama and not enough payoff. And so I think that's what happened.
Yeah, hold on. Just a couple of quick questions when we come back and let people know how they can follow you, because I've got a lot of questions about LSU football and LSU baseball. Right back with Jacques Doucet for a couple of more minutes after this break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
You know, what's cool, I've got one of our viewers, listeners, my friend Dave Cody was a sports anchor at Channel 7 in Austin, Texas for 36 years. And he's watching. He said, this guy, Jacques Doucet, he is very well informed. You really are. I mean, you know what you're talking about. Got a couple of quick questions here from some listeners.
Well, I want to tell that guy hello for putting in 40 years in local TV. He's earned a spot in heaven without a doubt.
No doubt about it, because I met him back in 1983 when I was in college, and he had an older brother, Bill Cody. He was an All-American linebacker in the late 60s at Auburn, played for the Saints for 9 years and lived on St. Charles, or lived there in New Orleans right next to the Mannings. So kind of had a cool older brother and a hell of a sportscaster there. 36 years in Texas. I doubt he ever heard any exaggerated stories from Longhorn boosters. Maybe one or two, but he's out in Bellingham, Washington, listening right now. But I got to ask you, baseball-wise, obviously as an Auburn grad, that was great for us to beat the number one team in the country. Paul Skeens is a hell of a pitcher. To have transferred from the Air Force, and that kind of answered a question. That's very rare for a guy to go into the portal and leave the Air Force Academy or any service academy. But how deep is that LSU pitching staff? How banged up is LSU right now? Because, look, you beat a team like that, you don't have any time really to celebrate, because you got to go on the road and play Jacksonville State. You got to play at Ole Miss. And then I look at LSU. They weren't number one for nothing.
Yeah, well, the pitching is a big concern right now outside of Paul Skeens. He has been obviously one of the greatest pitchers in LSU history in terms of the season he's having. This is only his first year, but I believe his record's 9-1. He is striking out something like 2 out of every 3 batters or something. And so, yeah, he struck out 15 against Auburn on Friday. LSU wins that one 3-0. But the starters outside of Skeens have been shaky, and credit the Auburn head coach on Saturday. I don't know if you watched the game or not, but in the 4th inning, there was a very strange ejection of LSU that the umps couldn't even determine who they were throwing out. They told Jay Johnson, the guy in the gray shirt, and he's like, we're all wearing gray. And they initially threw out the video guy for LSU, and then they threw out an assistant coach. And the Auburn coach came out, man, he had Shakespearean theatrics, man. He was pointing and shouting and, put on this big show for about 3 minutes. And all.
Yeah. it was kind of a shocker. All right, Jacques, we frozen you up there, but that was a hell of an ending to the game. And like I say, we're all wearing gray shirts. I think that kind of blew everybody away. But Jacques, hopefully you can come back here with us. But I just noticed that when the officials, the umpires, throw somebody out of a game, it always helps if they know where if they know who they're going to be throwing out. Okay, but you're not going to believe this. The electricity went out. They had a power failure on Jacques' end. Jacques, look forward. That is the first time. But all right, and wow. Okay. I want to hear. We'll get him back on next week to tell, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. How does that happen? But anyway, okay. And pitching, you hear that with every team in the SEC. And Jacques, I said the electricity went out, but finish that story about what happened in that Auburn LSU game, because again, the umpires, the guy in the gray shirt, got to be more specific than that. I want to hear this.
Well, yeah, and take a look, Rob. It's a beautiful day today, and the electricity keeps going out around. What the hell's going on? Anyway, so yeah, they threw out. They initially threw out the video coordinator guy, and then they later said no, it's the assistant Josh Jordan. And Jay Johnson says, and I've interviewed Josh Jordan, and I would agree with Jay Johnson.
Yeah,
he's never said a curse word in his life.
Yeah,
he's about as, I don't want to use the word wholesome, but yeah, something like that. And so these demonstratives, which, from the LSU perspective, they found like that was kind of funny with this new pitch clock and trying to speed everything up. This guy was allowed to, put on a performance there for a while. But after that, Ty Floyd, who had struck out like 7 batters in a row and was just mowing them down, he lost his focus and then just started walking people and everything. And that's when the game turned, and Auburn won the game 8-6 after LSU really missed a lot of opportunities early in the game. I think they left the bases loaded 3 times early in the game. But and then, on Sunday, LSU, their starting pitcher, Christian Little, he didn't get an out. I think he walked LSU as a team walked 6 guys in the first inning. And here's a funny thing to you also. I just say this real quick. Greatest guy in the world. The LSU pitcher coach lives the bad talk. He's the greatest guy in the world. Great coach, Wes Johnson, who's everywhere he's been, his teams have set records when it comes to pitching and everything. So that's a little funny. But anyway, yeah, I mean, LSU's got a great record. They're just compared against perhaps an unreachable expectation where they were preseason number 1 across the board, and everyone thinks they should win every game 15-0. And that's obviously not going to happen in this league. Yeah. But it's the first time this year they've lost back-to-back games. It's the first time that they've lost an SEC series, and here we are in early May. So
yeah, well,
so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've got a hell of a team. Jake, Jacques, tell people, Jacques, how they can follow you and keep up with you. This is great stuff. And look, we've had storms up here when we're doing the show, and a bolt of lightning sounded like a bomb going off, and all of a sudden we're not there. But tell people how they can follow you, and really appreciate your time. Yeah, Jacques, if you can tell people how they can keep up.
Yeah. You can see my name there, Jacques.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll let Jacques, we'll do it
Jacques
again.
Doucet on Twitter, WAFB, television station, WAFB.com.
All right. Well, we'll do it again next week. Look forward to it. Thanks so much. Okay. All right. Let's bring in Olin Buchanan, Texags.com. Great stuff from Jacques Doucet. Right in the middle of this thing, Olin had a power surge in the neighborhood. The power went out. So he was inside on the laptop, switches to the iPhone. But anyway, talking about SEC football with LSU, baseball. Now you've got a son at LSU, don't you? Yeah,
I was saying, so
you might want to hear what he said.
Power surge in Baton Rouge, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, all of a sudden, he just boom. He was telling a story about the Auburn LSU baseball game this past weekend when the umpire went out there and threw somebody out. He goes, "Who you throwing out of the game?" The LSU coach asked. He said, "The guy in the gray shirt." He goes, "We're all wearing gray shirts, man. I mean, who are you talking about?" They threw out the video guy. It's kind of a strange circumstances, but man, never a dull moment. What's going on out in College Station is football magazines are about, by my calculations, about 16 days away from being in our hands. So I'm ready for them.
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't know when those periodicals come out. It's kind of like when you start seeing the first leaves of spring. You know, it just gives you a reminder. Oh, better times are ahead. So I always look forward to them. I'm able to really find out what the what the opponents that on A&M schedule, what they're supposed to have, because I like some of them that use the local riders.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I like, because I want to find out what Scott Rabelais down in Baton Rouge thinks about LSU, right? Yeah. I want to find out what Tom Murphy up in Fayetteville thinks about Arkansas, you know, because those guys are there all the time. I value their input more than a national writer who's just making a phone call and hearing what somebody wants to tell him.
Yeah, and we were talking about that. That's funny you bring that up. Buddy Martin, GatorBaitMedia.com, and Gary Harris over at Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. They can't go to practice. You might get 15 minutes of stretching, and the only video that you get is a seriously edited version that the propaganda ministry sends out that they want you to see. Now, I can remember the days of sports writers going to practice, pulling the coach to the side, and making actual observations on their own, of their own volition, not what they wanted you to know. And I think, as crazy as it is, we're going to go back to that, because the fans are going to keep saying what I say. You're paying a coach $6 to $10 million a year. We have no contact with them. We have no idea what's going on. It'll just, there'll be some meeting in the middle there. But in defense of the coaches, with these things, these cell phones, they don't have any time. I mean, they are, it never stops. And I'm not some big celebrity, but my ringer's turned off, because I've got some text threads that might have 150 or 200 interactions in a day. Now, you get on a football Saturday, it's in the thousands. I mean, so that's kind of where we're. Maybe they can put some restrictions on social media time for the coaches. What about that?
Well, I don't know. Coaches have so much power right now, especially successful ones. I think I think you can look at two entities for the decrease in accessibility for the media. Is number one, I look at Nick Saban, who started limiting things, and then people saw how wildly successful he is, and say, well, why am I not following that lead? Okay. Yeah. And then reporters can blame themselves because there's always been an understanding, and sometimes it wasn't just an understanding. Sometimes it was actual rules about what are you going to report. I mean, you all go to practice and you see them working on a trick play, and some Yahoo reports it, which has been done. Hey, they were working on a trick play, and this is what they're going to. What are you doing? Or and when I used to cover the Texas Longhorns. I don't know if you knew that, and Mac Browne had, he opened practice. It was fine. You can sit there and observe, but he asked not to report any injuries until they've been able to notify players' family and everything. And they had a receiver back in the 10 or 15 years ago named Jordan Shipley,
Wow.
And he blew out his knee in practice.
Yeah.
And his parents found out through tweets that some reporter had tweeted out at practice. Hey, look, we're going to set up some guidelines. You're not going to follow them? Fine, we'll cancel practice. So I don't have a real issue with it as long as that's the way that they're going to treat everybody. I don't like it when there's a national guy comes into town. Oh, well, you can come to practice.
Exactly.
But I do wish that they would make players at least and other coaches available for to be interviewed. But in a lot of places they just don't, including Texas A&M.
Well, and that's incredible. Dave Cody had just texted me, and you started telling the story. He said Texas changed its access after Jordan Shipley was injured at practice, and his parents found out about it online from a writer who was there, probably around 2018. He was saying, but the fact that
longer ago than that.
Longer, okay, yeah.
Because Shipley played in that national championship game against Alabama. What was that, 2009?
Wow, 2009. Yeah, that's right. And then Dave is telling me Bob Shipley, Jordan Shipley's dad, was high school coach in Burnett, Texas. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what, it is so fun when if it's you, if it's Kurt Bowles, if it's Anwar Richardson, if it's Bo Carter, Dave Cody, any of y'all out in Texas, God, you know your craft. You practice it. You practice it like Waylon and Willie and Bob Wills. I mean, it's passion, but it is. But it's these stories like this. I mean, Dave is an encyclopedia. He is the crawl underneath the screen. I get so much information during every show from him. He was just telling me about being at his older brother. Wild Bill Cody is what his nickname was at Auburn, All-American linebacker, played for the Saints 9 years. He was at the induction into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame in 2014. Eli Gold and Major Ogilvy were in there, along with Ruthie Bolton, basketball player at Auburn. But the stories, like you say, are because you have relationships. Now, you're right there, not on the practice field in College Station, but pretty damn close. But I watched at media days closely. I watched what you and Kurt Bowles, when y'all ask questions, everybody in there is paying attention. You're very good at asking questions, and you're even better at writing. And that didn't happen by accident. Yeah. Okay.
Some days are better than others. Hey, I'm just glad Dave Cody text, so you know I wasn't lying.
No, I believe you. Hey, you're Olin Buchanan. If you can spell my last name, you can follow me. but it's just amazing to me how we used to have junior varsity football games on Sunday afternoons. You could see development of players. Remember the old, back in the early and mid 80s, you had JV freshman football games, and we
played them on Thursday night here. Okay. I don't know how y'all do it. What are you, from Alabama?
Well, Memphis, but when I was at Auburn, you could go over on a Sunday afternoon and just sit in Jordan-Hare Stadium and watch a freshman team, Auburn, play Georgia or Alabama.
You mean the college freshman team?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah, and so let's look at Texas A&M right now. I want to tell me a lot about Connor Wigman. Okay. Big time recruit. And then last year, Haynes King. Everybody thought Haynes King was going to be the guy. And Mildred, my trusted assistant, is giving me the stopwatch. We're about to go to a break, but tell the fans, because I got a lot of people going, A&M's got all this talent. We know about 30 guys have gone into the portal, but there's a ton of talent still there. They're not falling out of the top 7, top 8 in recruiting, Olin. So you've got, if Bobby Petrino is left alone, I've watched this guy's career since he came to Auburn in 2002. He wins everywhere he goes. Be right back with Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com. Hey, let me say something real quick about one of our sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis, 1835 Union Avenue, and Camp Lee, opening up the first of 3 locations. Opens at 5:30 in the morning. Rumble Boxing Gym right there at Union and McLean, Midtown Memphis. 45-minute workout, which is the same as a prize fight, which is Olin Buchanan knows about prize fighting, probably covered one. 15 3-minute rounds that you do at Rumble Boxing Gym. It is calisthenics. It is push-ups. It is using dumbbells. Then you hit the punching bag. Jab, jab, punch, punch, gut, gut. rumbleboxinggym.com. They've got all the gear, all the equipment there. It is a state-of-the-art facility. And then when you leave there, it's across the street from Walgreens. There's bars and restaurants around there. But you got a community of like-minded warriors. rumbleboxinggym.com. Check them out on the web. Olin, let's talk about the quarterback room, because Bobby Petrino, again, everywhere he goes, he wins, and there's talent to work with.
I think there's talent. I like what I saw from Connor Wigman in a small sample size when he took over as the A&M quarterback. They had 2 of their better offensive games with him as a starting quarterback against Ole Miss and against LSU. Now, he didn't have to throw a lot against LSU because they're running so well, but he did have some key first down runs, and he threw a couple of touchdown passes in that game. Did not throw an interception in the 5 games he played. Had, I think, 8 touchdowns. And then you got Max Johnson, who did not do anything spectacular in his 3 starts last year. They were 2-1 with him as a starting quarterback. But you go with Max and you look back to 2021 when he was the starter at LSU, and he threw for 2,800 yards. I think he had 27 touchdowns, maybe 28, and I think just 6 interceptions. Now, they were only 6-6 that year, but I don't think you could put that on Max. I think that was more about the secondary that was giving
Tigers
yardage and some hapless coaching. So, but if I had to guess, and again, Fisher is adamant that it's an open competition and it will be through August. But if I had to place my money on the horse right now, I would bet on Connor Wigman. I think Wigman. Okay, put it this way. I think Johnson is one of those guys that you can win with. You absolutely can win with. You got to put some talent around it. I think Connor Wigman's one of those guys you can win because of. And I think that's the 2 differences in them, at least in my unexpert opinion.
Well, but you cover the Aggies, round the clock. What about the offensive line? It's so hard to find offensive linemen, much less develop depth on the offensive line. And I think because kids – if things aren't going their way, they'll leave in a heartbeat.
In fact, they had a guy leave to just transfer to Cal. I don't think they're too concerned about it, but he started a lot of games. He was named the freshman All-SEC guy, Matthew Wyckoff. He started several games after Bryce Foster tore his ACL. But Bryce Foster's back and healthy, and so I think another guy moved past him, and so he didn't want to be third on the depth chart. So they wish him the best. But look, offensive line is the number 1 point of concern at Texas A&M. Without a doubt, it's a line of scrimmage league in the SEC, and A&M just wasn't very good in the offensive line last year. I don't think they were terrible, but they were. I think they were probably below average. And Reuben Fothery, who played excellent as a true freshman last year as a sophomore, took a step back. He gained some weight, thought that he needed to get bigger, and I think it made him slower. And I think he's figured that out. He needs to take that weight off, and he says he has. Layden Robinson played hurt, but you expect him to be your best offensive lineman, most of your experienced guy. He didn't play up to expectations, and he'll tell you that. He didn't play his own standards, get Foster back. And I think Cam Dewberry came in last year as a true freshman and started the second half of the season at left guard, and they got better when he came in. So I think I'll be surprised if he doesn't start, even though Jimbo Fisher just last night in Houston said Martin Naboo, this enormous kid out of Washington State, came down and played some as a freshman last year, and they're really excited about him, but I don't know where you're going to put him. And maybe at left tackle, even though I don't think he's ever played tackle. Where last year you had Trey Zoom, who was once a 4-star recruit that they were excited about, but he played hurt all last year, and quite frankly didn't play that well. But he was playing hurt, but they love, and I mean all caps, love this true freshman Chase Basantes out of New Jersey. They love this guy, so I think there's going to be a heck of a competition to find out who's going to be the starter at left tackle. But the bottom line is, whoever you put out there, whatever combination has to be better than it was last year. It has to be remarkably better. You don't want to go from what was a C- last year to a C. That's improvement, but that's not good enough. So you need to be able to take that C- and turn it into a B+ at least.
Yeah. Well, when you think about 30 guys that have left via the portal, it wasn't all from that freshman class they signed in February of 2022. How many of those guys are still there?
Oh gosh, how many of from the class? Oh, most of them.
Most of that class of 22. Okay.
Yeah, a vast majority. I mean, and some of the guys. One of the guys that left's already been kicked off at Ole Miss. And you had, I don't know if you heard about what was going on. 4 of the guys that left, any program would have trouble with them because of what they were doing in South Carolina in the locker room, vaping. So those guys were out, and then you had some guys that might have been a little bit homesick. One guy went back to Georgia, but you still got Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, LT Overton, Connor Wigman, Le'Veon Moss. Just I could go on and on. Gabriel Browne-Dindy, who was out of Lakeland, Florida, who was hurt all last year. He's still around, a defensive lineman that they're really excited about. So I think if you took the guys that are still here from that class, they'd still be the number 1 class in the country. I don't think it'd be the number 1 class of all time.
Yeah.
But I think that when you look at the guys that left, one of the guys, most of them went to lesser programs. And a lot of the 30, there's like 3 walk-ons in there that I don't know how they get in listed. And then there's a guy like, and I think we talked about this before, Devin Price going to Appalachian State, right? Mm-hmm. Because he just wanted to play. He wasn't going to play. A lot of the guys that left just weren't going to play, and they were looking for a place where they could probably start.
Yeah, well, and that's what it is. That in the past, a guy would quit or be cut, whatever. You wouldn't hear from him again. He might go somewhere else. Now, with the portal, they go in the portal, and it makes them look more valuable because you can look online and see at any moment if a player's name is in the portal. But I think Mac Browne last year before the season was on Paul Feinbaum's show, and he said there are roughly 4,000 kids in the portal that hadn't been picked up. So we got data. We got data going back to October 15th of 2018, which is when the portal became the law of the land. And everybody benefits from it. Everybody suffers from it. But I guess what I hate is we're not teaching kids to compete. Things don't go their way. They transfer. Now, if you've been a place for 3 years and you're not getting any playing time, you're probably not going to get any playing time, but you gave it 3 years. It's the ones that come in January out of high school. If they're not on the depth chart first team after spring practice, they bolt. That's where you got a problem. I have a problem.
Yeah, and A&M had a guy, Bobby Taylor, who was a 4-star cornerback out of Katy, Texas, just down the road. Yeah. And he went into the portal. And he was in the portal for like 2 days and came back and said, "Hey, can I come back?" They said, "Well, you of course." So, he went to the portal. And I think he's one of those guys they count, but then he came back. Yeah. So I think maybe you're going to see that more and more often. Guys say, "Hey, maybe I want to see what's out there," and then they look around and say, "Maybe I had a better situation than I thought." Yeah.
Well, it's like when you were a kid, you wanted to run away and you packed your stuff and put it on the end of a stick in a bag, and your dad says, "Okay, have fun." You're like, "I'm running away. I'm really all right. We'll miss you. I'm really running away." Okay, see, that's kind of what the portal is for a lot of these kids. Switching over to the defense. Let's talk about the defensive coordinator, Texas A&M. Last year, and you made a good point on the show a couple of weeks ago, and you said, "I'm not making excuses, but you take about a touchdown a game, A&M could be 10-2 last year. The narrative is completely different. Yeah. And we know, I mean, you know, the Auburn game, every game, the Appalachian State game, down to the wire. Again, the scary part is, say what you want about Bobby Petrino. The guy can flat out coach. Missouri State took Arkansas down to the wire last year.
True. You know, their defense was really good last year. They averaged, I think, around 21.5 points a game given up. And gosh, their offense didn't help them. So they weren't bad in points given up, but look, they had a pop gun pass rush that has to be a lot better. They were terrible in run defense. Ole Miss ran for 400 yards on them. They've got to get better. Now, will they get better? I'll tell you, here's the reasons why you think they might be better. Not saying they will be, but McKinley Jackson, guy out of Mississippi, missed about half the year last year. He's their best defensive lineman. He's healthy. Fidel Diggs missed about half the year. He was their best pass rusher. Only had 3 sacks. 2 of them were against Alabama. Caused fumbles on both of them, but he's back. But guys like I mentioned before, Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, Gabriel Brown, LT Overton, those guys have had who came in as highly touted freshmen, have had a year to grow up, not just the experience of playing, but just getting bigger to go against the grown men in the SEC. So maybe that's going to make it better. And Edgerrin Cooper at linebacker and Chris Russell at linebacker, those guys were playing they were first-year starters. Now, did they play well? Not really. They were inconsistent. Sometimes they had nice games, but overall they didn't play well. So are you going to be better in your second year as a starter than you were your first? Maybe. You know, that's not uncommon, but you still have to do it. So I think it's one of those things with A&M defensively. The secondary is going to be good. It's going to be real good. But will you be better against the run, and will you be better against pass rush? There's reasons to think you might be, but I think we've learned, if we didn't already know, not to assume anything.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you look at the schedule. This is what I always like to ask people. Here it is, May 9th, and you're looking at a schedule that starts, September 2nd for most schools, maybe a week earlier for a handful. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything, because it's how you play that week that sets you up for the next week. And every week it's something different. And we all know, because now my kids are 22 to 34. I got 2 boys, 2 girls. You got one in college. I mean, their emotions change by the hour. It's like watching the stock market, like watching the tape. Don't fight the tape.
Well, I think what you're saying is, it's kind of like what I told my son when he and his frat brothers came to our house for the Texas A&M LSU game, and they were taunting me, and I said, you don't have to be the best team. You just have to be the best team that night.
That's right.
And clearly A&M over the season wasn't the best team, but on that night you were. And if you can be the best team that night and then keep getting better and start early, then, you have a chance to have a great season. Maybe that'll be the case. But, again, A&M wasn't the best team on a lot of nights last year.
Yeah, well, think about teams when they're mired in a losing streak. And all of a sudden, I remember Tennessee in 1988 started off 0-5 or whatever, and then got on a 6-game winning streak. And I think they played Minnesota in the Liberty Bowl, but they started off like it was going to be the worst team in school history. And then in 89, they were co-SEC champions. SEC champions again in 1990, 91. It started in the middle of that losing streak. I'm saying you can go back, as you just said. It's not how do you match up on paper. It's how do you match up on game day. And the fact that they were staying at your house, eating your food, and enjoying themselves. I mean, seriously. I mean, my oldest one went to Alabama, but she still gets to stay at the house when she comes home. But she's not gonna. Now, Audrey's evolved for life, and I'm Auburn. I mean, so you got Auburn, you got Alabama, you got Tennessee.
Wait. Is there a thing between Auburn and Tennessee?
Used to be a great rivalry. Oh yeah.
Okay.
See, and until they went to the SEC from 1956 to 1991, that was one of Auburn's premier rivalries. Auburn, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Auburn, Florida, Auburn, Tennessee, and Auburn, Georgia Tech till 87. You're lucky, though. You're going to get to renew the A&M game against Texas. Now, you were writing for the Austin American-Statesman for 12 years.
Yeah, 11.
You know that Texas 11. But that's very rare for a writer to have a background like yours. That's why we love having you on Sidelines, because you always bring it. You can switch to Texas as quickly as you can to A&M, and also you're friends with Kirk Bowles, who is Mr. Texas football for the Austin American-Statesman.
Well, he's old. Which I like to remind him all the time.
He's awesome.
I always say between the two of us, we probably know everything. And then if you ask me a question I don't know, I say, well, that's one of the things he knows. But we know a lot about football here in Texas. Now, that's why I have to ask you questions about Auburn, because I may not know the history in Alabama quite as well.
Yeah. Well, the Tennessee series with Auburn, if you talk to longtime Auburn and Alabama fans, they will tell you point blank that the Tennessee trip to Knoxville is the greatest road trip you can take. Now, but I knew
Alabama and Tennessee had a thing. I just didn't know Alabama. I mean, Auburn and
Tennessee did a great series. And I think Auburn's won 7 of the last 8 in the series. But interestingly, as you know, the Texas and Texas A&M rivalry, I mean, that is a special rivalry. And we run out of time. We got Rodney Orr from Tider Insider coming on here in just a moment. But got to get you back on. Every time you're on, I learn a lot. And I want to tell you how much we appreciate you taking your time to join us, because it's just like Jacques Doucet said, was on right before you came on from Baton Rouge. Dave Cody, he goes, the man has 40 plus years in local TV. He goes, there's a special place in heaven for people like that. And I got to say that for the writers like you that put out. I see you on Feinbaum. I see you everywhere. But tell people real quick how they can follow you.
Follow us on TexAgs. You can follow us on Twitter at TexAgs. Just TexAgs on Twitter. And you can, if you're so inclined, you want to check us out. We are the premier outlet for Texas A&M sports. So TexAgs.com, just abbreviated version of Texas Aggies. And if you want to follow me, and I appreciate it if you would on Tyler, it's just Olin Buchanan. We don't hide behind handles. We put our real name out there. So Olin Buchanan on Twitter, if you can figure out how to spell that, and it's right down there on the bottom there, then you can figure out how to follow me. And I'd appreciate it if you would.
Hey, we will absolutely support you. Thanks so much. We'll have you next week. We'll be right back with Tider Insider's Rodney Orr after this quick.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider. And this is the May Veterinary Insider Report, May Veterinary Clinic in Tuscaloosa and Northport since 1964. Remember, they're open every day of the week. Sundays is pickup from May Doggy Daycare. They have 2 facilities, 3 to 5 p.m. Sunday afternoons. They have a pool. It is state-of-the-art facility, clean. If you have cats, get this. They have connecting cat condos for cats who live in the same house. You may have 3 cats, and if you do, they can all be there together in the connecting cat condos. May Veterinary Clinic, Dr. Wayne May started it all in 1964. Waller and Guy May, the best veterinary care, the best veterinary clinic in Tuscaloosa and Northport. And again, people come from all over to the May Veterinary Clinic to get the best service there is. You want to take care of your dogs, cats, and animals. I've known Dr. Waller May since the spring of 1983. Top-notch veterinarians and great people. That's just what it boils down to. Rodney, let's get started here. Got a lot to talk about. Tyler Buchner is now the new quarterback signee, but he's not necessarily the starting quarterback. There's a hell of a battle to take place at Alabama for that starting job. And let's hear what you got to say about it.
Well, I think that, as we said last week, Rob, I think that, the reason Alabama took another quarterback was simple. They weren't pleased with, and I say the coaching staff, Nick Saban, Tommy Rees, of the progress that had been made among the guys that are here now. And they felt like they needed another guy in Tyler Buchner. He's extremely athletic, a guy that runs really well. He's got a strong arm. He's got a lot of familiarity with Tommy Rees and vice versa. So I think they wanted to bring in a guy that they felt like could win the job. I don't think they just brought him in, to compete. I think they brought him in to win the job. So I think he's going to have a great opportunity to do that.
Well, when you look at Jalen Milroe, you look at Ty Simpson, they both had their chance in the spring. From what they accomplished, how good do you feel if Tyler Buchner is not the starting quarterback? Which one of them would you favor getting the job?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that both those guys have made progress. I would say Milroe is obviously an incredible athlete. I think the things that he needs to work on is continue to develop as a passer. He's got to be consistent. He's got to be able to make the reads. He's got to be able to distribute the ball. And that's the one thing Nick Saban said is we've got to have a quarterback who can distribute the ball. When you look at Ty Simpson, I think Ty has all the tools. I think he can distribute the ball. I think the one thing about Ty is he's a young player who has to mature. And when I say mature, I'm talking about as a quarterback, as a player, all of those things. And, sometimes guys develop at different rates. Yeah, Mac Jones wasn't ready when he was a redshirt freshman. I'm not sure if Ty will be ready or not in 2023. Maybe he will. But I just think after spring, you have to say, okay, Ty, you've got the tools. You just have to develop and mature.
And when you talk about a quarterback maturing, you're talking about just grasping the game, and you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees. What did you see different in the spring? At least I know it's limited to nothing, which you can see in practice, but in the A-Day game, what you saw, what's different about Tommy Rees versus Bill O'Brien?
Well, I think first of all, it's the differences in the personnel. I think number one is there's not Bryce Young. So, they're kind of going to have a little bit of a philosophical change simply because of the personnel. I think, too, when you look at the offensive line, I think this has got the potential to be much better than what they had the last 2 years. They've got some really outstanding running backs. So I think that's going to certainly figure into it. So I think they're going to be more physical running the football. I think that's what Nick Saban wants to do. He wants to move in that direction back to something closer to what they used to do in terms of controlling the line of scrimmage. Now, with that said, I think some people, and especially some Alabama fans, are under the impression that Alabama's going to go back to running it 60 plays a game and throwing 12. That's not what I think they want to do. I think they want to have balance, and I think that they want to run it more effectively. But I also firmly believe that Nick Saban wants to continue to use the explosive playmakers that they have a quarterback who can distribute it to those guys. So, again, I just think it's more of a personnel thing, the differences between maybe what O'Brien did the last 2 years and what Reese is probably going to do.
Yeah. And you bring in Kevin Steele over on the defensive side. I'm a huge fan of his. This is his third time to work with Nick Saban. And, you know, you go from Pete Golding for 4 years, and it was always with Pete Golding, the defense was really good. Is Alabama going to have an elite, defense like they've had on some of their teams in 11 and 12? And I think everything will always be compared, in my opinion, to two defenses in Alabama history, and that's 79 with E.J. Jr. out of Nashville Hunters Lane High School, and the 92 team with Chris Donnelly. And golly, they had so much talent. James Gregory out of St. Louis was a big defensive lineman, 8 feet tall. But can you really have, Rodney, a lockdown, shut down defense anymore? You know, Georgia did it in 21, holding people to about 11, 12 points a game. That was a freak, but they had 5 first-round draft picks on there.
You know, I think since 2020, Georgia's 1-3 in games that they've given up 40 or more points.
Yeah.
They probably, had Marvin Harrison not been injured, they probably would be 0-4. It's difficult to stop these offenses that are that talented with a quarterback who can throw it, get some protection, receivers. To me, offensively, it's quarterbacks and receivers now. You have to be physical up front. I get all that. Yeah. But I think if you have a quarterback, whether it's Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, a guy who can make throws, and receivers who are very difficult to defend, it makes it difficult on defenses nowadays. As good as Georgia was, go back to the 2021 SEC championship game. They could not stop Bryce Young, Jamison Williams, John Mechie before he went down. And frankly, probably if Mechie and J-Mo would have been healthy in that national championship game, could have been much different. It is what it is. But I only use Georgia because they've kind of been the standard defensively. Let's be honest. They've been the standard defensively the last few years. And even they have a very, very difficult time stopping these offenses that have those kinds of players and abilities.
Well, and you go back to before Alabama made a real switch, and it started more or less with Tua. They were averaging, say, 31 points, 32 points a game. All of a sudden, they're averaging in the mid-40s. And if you're going to beat Alabama, you have to score more than 45. Look in the 2019 season. LSU had 46 in Tuscaloosa, Auburn 48 in Auburn, and those were the only 2 losses Alabama had. I like that stat. Say it one more time about Georgia is 1-3 when they give up 40 or more points since year what?
I think it was 2020. Don't quote me on that one. I would have to check it, Rob, but I think it's since 2020, 4 games that they've given up 40 or more points, and they're 1-3. And again, I think they would have lost to Ohio State had Harrison not gone down. But yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to stop these offenses nowadays with the ability that they have, with the skill players. And I think that's one thing that Alabama wants to continue to do is use those guys, but not be so quarterback reliant. Become more balanced, have a great offensive line, be physical, be able to run the football when you need to, because that's something that they really haven't been able to do as well in the last couple of years. So I think that's the one thing that Tommy Reese wants to do. I think they'll utilize the tight ends a lot in this offense, but I also think that they're, once again, I say it again, I think Tommy Reese will use the wide receivers and, challenge the field in all areas.
Well, I like that, challenge the field. You got to, and you look at. I mean, think about what Williams, coming from Ohio State, he had a few. Very not the stats were really low. He comes to Alabama. Jamison Williams has over 1,500 yards on 76 catches and a bunch of touchdowns. And yeah, look, it's scary. He was stacked up in a receiver room like that at Ohio State. And I want to ask you about the running backs at Alabama. You got, the depth chart. Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams out of Hueytown, Alabama, home of the Allison, the NASCAR racing legends. Who's going to get that starting? I mean, I know Jace McClain's number one, but are you going to see a running back by committee, which is what most schools are doing now? These kids, it's almost like they're saying, I don't want too many touches in a game. I want to save my body for the NFL.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're going to see Jace McClellan. This is a great opportunity for him. It's what he's been waiting for. I think Jace is a lot better than what some people think. He was having a really good year in 2021 till he had the knee injury. And then last year, I think he was still trying to regain himself. And I think towards the end of the year, when he started getting more opportunities, for example, in the Ole Miss game, Jace started showing up big. So I think Jace should be in line to have a good year. I think you mentioned Roydell Williams. He had a really good spring. I think the true freshman, Justice Haynes, this guy that's going to get a lot of opportunity. He's going to be eventually he is going to be a guy that's going to be an outstanding player. I would say this too, don't forget Jam Miller, the sophomore out of Tyler, Texas. I think he's another one. He's a lot of people comparing him to Josh Jacobs. So that's quite a quartet they have right there. And they have 5-star Richard Young from Lehigh Acres, Florida coming in this summer. So, I think it's a running back group that's going to have a lot of success.
Well, I mean, Rodney, we keep hearing running back by committee, but, think back about that 92 team. You didn't have any one guy that won the national championship. Like Derek Lassick Owens out of Syracuse, New York, was a player that showed up late in the season. But the running back by committee has, if you've back in the days of the wishbone, it damn sure was. So it's not, it's just, doesn't football just repeat itself more than people want to admit?
No, I think so. Now ask me more specifically, Rob, what's your question? I'm sorry.
Well, the running back by committee, we've seen it a lot over the years. And in a wishbone, you may have five guys that had over 500 yards rushing in a season. Two of them may be over 1,000.
Well, Rob, back in the day, tell you a story. I thought Lenny Patrick could have been a Heisman Trophy.
Yeah. Yeah. He could have been for sure. Rodney, but we've lost you there. But Lenny Patrick out of Walker County High School, Jasper, Alabama, on that 81 team. He was a hell of a player. No doubt. Rodney, you back? Okay. Yeah, Rodney, let me know. Just jump back in when you can get back in with us. But there've been so many guys over the years that Alabama's had. But I'd say Lenny Patrick was a 5'9" kid, one of the fastest backs Alabama's had, along with Gene Jelks.
Yeah, Lenny was a guy that as I was saying before we lost connection.
Yeah.
Lenny was a guy who I would check the stats every week. I remember when he was a true freshman.
Yeah.
He had 8 carries for 111 yards against Ole Miss, 9 for 121 against Kentucky. And then, if he carried it 4 or 5 times a game, the rest of his career he was lucky.
Yes.
So that's the way it was back in the day of the wishbone. But No, it's. I mean, again, it's a. I don't see a Derrick Henry in terms of a guy that's going to carry it 40 times a game for Alabama. I think you're going to see the load kind of shared amongst the guys. And the good thing is that they're all pretty good receivers too. So they'll be effective, in that role.
Yeah. Well, you talked about it, scoring 45 and 50 points in a game. It's not uncommon. You go back to that Tennessee-Alabama game, 52-49. These are unthinkable scores from 20 and 30 years ago, but they're commonplace now. Rodney, we're getting close to being out of time. And let me just say this. This is the Crimson Tide Report, sponsored by May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa, and Northport, Alabama since 1964. Open 7 days a week. Pickup and delivery of your dogs and cats on Sundays, 3 to 5 p.m. They have 2 veterinary clinics, again, Tuscaloosa and Northport. Top-notch quality, the best veterinary care you can. It doesn't matter where you live. Bring your dogs and cats and your animals to Tuscaloosa. While you're there, you may want to stop at the Casa. But anyway, Rodney, let people know some of the stuff you got coming up. I know your TV show is tonight at 6:30. You may not know what you're talking about. Like you said, it's kind of a surprise, whatever Gary and you were going to do, but how they can follow you and subscribe to Tider Insider, and look forward to having you on next week again.
All right. Well, Rob, it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access with your credit card. Or if you prefer, there's an address there to send a check. That gives you our premium information. It's kind of slow right now, but our all sports forum never slows down. It's our community of Alabama fans. And again, it's only $48 a year, TiderInsider.com.
Yeah. And Rodney, when you're looking at college football, I mean, the magazines are all about to start coming out. For Alabama fans, like every fan base, to keep up with their team, the portal ended, I think, April 30th. So what now? If you're a graduate, you can transfer, we know, at any time. But from here until August, when practice starts, is the roster pretty much set now? So, and if they are changes, that's always going to be updated on the Tider Insider website, correct?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like you said, unless there's someone that grad transfers, it's probably pretty well set. But if there's any changes, we certainly keep up with that. Yeah.
Well, and it changes. It's like watching the crawl on the stock market at the bottom of the screen. It's just a different world we live in. But Rodney, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to help us have a blessed day. And to all of our listeners, God bless you. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Most often, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Don't ever forget to help people and be grateful for what you got. See you tomorrow, folks. We are out.